Gan matsotso esti biba. Okay. All right, Nega. Now it's on Rocked the live stream. I'm gonna check to make sure the live stream is on. And Nigi, there it is. There it is. Biba biba biba. Right. Half a day todo samzu. Bueno hudzung. Inanu si Michael Lujan Bevacqua and estigi un episode Fanachu. Half a day. Sidus masino hamzu. Thank you to all of you tuning in. This is the Fanachu podcast. I am your host, Michael Lujan Bevacqua, and we have another one of our favorite episodes, which is a Learning Chamoru Journey episode. This is the fourth in a series. Every time I have a session of Zoom Chamoru classes, whether Fanyomakan or Fanutsanen, I invite students, learners to come and then share their experiences in learning the Chamoru language. And so I'm very excited that we're going to have this fourth episode. We're going to hear a lot about sort of the struggles that people have had, perhaps the support that they've received, those who have inspired them to learn more. It is a tradition too that somebody cries, and so who knows if that's going to happen this time. But before we get to this, though, there's something that I do want to highlight. I do want to respect and give honor to somebody who is very important to the Fanachu podcast, who passed away last week. And so, Senor Kin Conception was a musician for more than 60 years on Guam, most famously with the group The Radiants, which was performing up until very recently at Good Times and at Linda's before it closed because of Typhoon Mawar. And so Senor Kin was a musician. He was a veteran. He, after losing his son to cancer, and his son had to leave island to get medical cannabis treatment in the west coast of the United States, he and his family developed a community campaign to legalize medical marijuana on Guam, and they were successful. Senor Kin used to record for KUAM. He used to do their Chamorro language talk show. He used to curate their Chamorro music. And he also used to do the news Gifinot Chamorro. He would translate the news into Chamorro and upload them to social media. He did that for a few years. During the pandemic, he started working for the Fanachu podcast, in addition to taking other jobs, working for Speaker Terlahi for a while, and then eventually working at the Commission Gifinot Chamorro. And so through Fanachu, he brought more than a dozen Chamorro musicians to the podcast to document their experiences. This was one of our most important interviews when we spent the day with Ignacio or Ike Tzatfris here, who was part of the Tzatfris brothers, who were one of the only Chamorro musical groups performing in the 60s. And so even though he was in his mid-70s, Senor Kin had a youthful energy, and he was constantly inspired. He was constantly inspired by those who were learning Chamorro. This is him after he presented to the Chamorro language immersion camp that we just had earlier this year here in Guam. And for Fanachu, in addition to helping us document the experiences of Chamorro musicians, he also recorded the Cuentos Guahan series. 46 mini Dikikina podcast episodes in total. And he did it because he thought there should be more Chamorro language out there in the world. And I told him that there are people who don't have anyone to speak Chamorro to, who don't have any place where they can listen to Chamorro regularly. And so let's just do this where you just talk about whatever you want for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. You can talk about the price of milk at Payless. You can talk about sort of political status. You can talk about, your faith, your religion. You can talk about anything you'd like. Just do it in Chamorro. And so when he got to meet the students in the immersion camp, he was brought to tears when some of them said, "Hogui Zoku Chamorro celebrity. You are my Chamorro celebrity, because I'm in the States. I don't have anyone to talk to, but I listen to your voice and I learn Chamorro from you." And so, Sidus Masi Sinot Kin put Toru Bidamo, thank you for all that you have done for this island, for music, for our language, for our people. Usaga Gimanagahit, Usaga Gimanatanga, Usaga Gimanagong. All right. And so one of the things that Sinot Kin Conception was incredibly passionate about was the Chamorro language. And that is what brings us here today for this episode, is that the majority of the Chamorro people in the world cannot speak their native language. Some census and some surveys show that as many as 80% of Chamorro people cannot speak Chamorro. That includes those in the diaspora as well as those in the Marianas. And so reckoning with this reality, reckoning with this reality is important so that we can do something about it. So that the idea that a Chamorro who cannot speak Chamorro, it used to be the problem, right? It used to be something that was an issue. And so you would tease those who couldn't speak Chamorro. Those who can't speak Chamorro are the majority now. They're the majority now, which means we have to deal with that, and we have to find ways to move ahead to help bring the language back, rather than continuing to just tease those who cannot speak Chamorro. And so that's why we have this series, Learning Chamorro Journeys, Chamorro Language Journeys, in which we just highlight the experiences of people who have tried to learn Chamorro, who are trying to learn Chamorro, to help us understand that whether you have been speaking Chamorro your entire life, or whether you are starting to speak Chamorro today, there's always more that you can learn. There's always more to know. And the most important thing is the journey of continuing to learn. And so let's do some introductions with our panel, Sidus Masinu Hamzu Todos. And so first, let's go to Tish. Now, go ahead and introduce yourself, your family name. Did you grow up in the Marianas? Did you grow up in the diaspora? Tish, Hago na put for what?
Hafide, Guausi, Tish Messingan. My maiden name is Letitia Borja, Chaco Borja. Familian Dasu on the Borja side, Familian Cumbida for the Chaco side. And then my mom's, my grandmother is Familian Intik and Oting. I'm actually born and raised on the island. I didn't leave the island till I got married. Actually, my father was active duty military, so I spent like maybe a year or so off island, but majority of my life was on the island. And so, you know, even being on the island for so long, I actually didn't understand Chamorro. So, but my grandparents did speak Chamorro to me, but I just waited till they, you know, translated into English. I kind of like didn't take advantage of that because I didn't know the importance of it till now. I have 5 children. My husband is active duty military, so that's the reason why we left the island 26 years ago. So we go back and forth. I try and make sure that my kids know where we're from. So my kids have been to the island. Just in 2019, my 3 youngest children, I brought them home and we spent the summer there so that they can be around family. And they loved it so much. It's like, well, because, you know, they love the island, they love swimming, they just enjoyed it, and they, you know, love going back. And that's important for me, for them to know where they're from. Because, you know, being military, we move around a lot. So I'm kind of like, if you ask my kids where they're from, or they'll be saying like, well, they don't know how to answer it. I'm like, you're from Guam. You know, they're like, I don't know, we're not from Guam. I said, no, you're from Guam, and you're Chamorro. And so I try to instill that. But I've been really wanting to learn the language. I've kind of, you know, mamala, that I can't say it, you know, that I couldn't speak Chamorro or understand it. And so I'm really, my journey has been transforming over the years. So I didn't know how much more to tell.
Sidus Masi Tish. And so next, let's hear from Catalina.
Half a day. Inan, who's the Catalina Guzman. Let's see. I've asked many different people in the family for our family name for the Guzman, and no one says they know one, but when I was living on Guam, all I had to do was say Radio Barrigada, and everyone knew that family. So maybe that's become our family name. I don't know. My mom's maiden name is Castro, and I asked her, and she was saying that she vaguely remembers Podzestes, but she wasn't positive about that. And like Tish, military family for my dad. And so I was born in California, and he got stationed in Guam back in 1973 to 75 or 76. So I did get to attend San Vicente School for a few years, my first couple years. And we left right after Typhoon Pamela because he got stationed in California. And I did stay there until I finished my education, finished college. Then I decided to move back to Guam. And that was in 1992. And I stayed with my grandfather, who's Ignacio Francisco. And I lived in Mongmong with him until he passed away. Sorry, that's my phone. And I ended up staying there till 2000. And then I moved back to California for more education, that pattern. And I've been here ever since then. Yeah.
Sidus Masi, Catalina. Sidus Masi. And then Hungan, I mean, for some Chamorro families, if you're not the Cruzes, then people know who you are. So you don't necessarily need a family name. If you're not a Santos or a Cruz or one of those giant families, where you have the family reunion where you have to take over the entire Tumon Bay to fit everyone, then Hungan. So, but Sidus Masi, Catalina, for sharing. Gabby, let's go to you next, and then to Carla.
Hafade Todos Hamzu. I'm Gabby. I have a slide of my beautiful grandmother. My aunt, I called her last week and she sent me all these photos. And Helen Drennan Menabusen Diaz. So we were searching for our family name because as far back as it went was Diaz, but then we found Menabusen, and I was telling Aunt Rose, I've heard other people say that last name. So that just came to light last week, and I was very excited. She was born and raised on the island. She met my grandfather. It was his first duty station. He was Latino and fluent in Spanish, and my grandmother was born and raised on the island, spoke Chamoru. So we were always like, why didn't they just try to pass down the language together? And lately it's been clicking. In Spanish, you say, how are you doing? ¿Cómo estás? And you say in Chamorro, you say, Hafa tatat mano how? And they're so different. So it's been kind of like a light bulb that's gone off oh, no wonder they didn't speak it together. Even though there's a lot of overlap, they're very different. So yeah, I'm here because I'm very connected. I resonated with what Tish said about how she tells her kids you're Chamorro. Because I grew up military. I grew up in Europe, and I grew up in Hawaii. I lived the past 8 years in Alaska. And the past year and a half alone, I've lived on a ship, and I don't even know how many hotels. And right now I'm in Tampa, Florida, and I just bought my first home. So I move a lot. That I think was the only thing I have for my introduction.
Sidus Masi, Gabby, and I did want to mention, so the flyer for today's episode, the artwork for that, of course, comes from Gabby, the beautiful sort of drawing and painting that she did, where you can see Fua rock in the background. Sidus Masi, Gabby. And so, Carlo, por favor, let's let's have you introduce yourself now.
Hafaday, Anon Husi Carlo Velasco. I'm actually Sissy's husband. I'm Filipino. And let's see, what was I supposed to do again? Was born and raised on Guam. Lived in Tamuning my whole life. So it's tough to hear about my school, especially Tamuning and LBJ, kind of being condemned and not passing any kind of what do you call that, for them to be open. But I think one of them's open now. And then just hearing about the schools. Anyways, so I was just there last week, so it was nice to be back. Got sick on the way out, probably because it's homesickness, because I had to leave. Supposed to be there for a high school reunion, 20 years, but they postponed it. But thankfully, a lot of them were great and spent some time with us while we were out there. So it's kind of a bummer, though. We want to come back. We're already thinking about coming back again. And of course, I was there for the protest for the with Senor Bevacqua for the water in the gun range. When they did their
over
live
the firing range. The firing range. Yes.
Yep. And it was interesting to meet people. Some of your friends from, was it Fiji or New Zealand?
Oh yes, from New Zealand. That's right.
Yeah. So yeah. As far as my wife, her family name is oh shoot, I usually know this. Oh my goodness. So Santos Beluk, and then the Manabusan and Chargalaf is Kutdi. Supposed to be from like Hagatnya, PD, or Tizan, wherever they were moved around, because the U.S. government said so. It's funny how everybody here, the U.S. government, moved this around. But it's crazy because again, my wife's grandfather, the U.S. government was the reason why her, their family kind of existed too. So because their grandfather moved there with the Navy and decided to stay there, and yeah, but yeah. So I don't know if I'm supposed to do any more other than that. I was about to just go off. Yeah,
Carlo.
sorry.
Good.
Yeah, no problem.
No. And thank you, Carlo. Thank you for joining too. Because
of course,
one of the things that I, that I always tell people is that, languages are supposed to be shared with others. And so I appreciate you as somebody who's Filipino from Guam, trying to learn more Chamorro. Because I think, even Gabby, going back to your story about your ancestors, that would have been cool if they had just said, well, let's speak Spanish and Chamorro, and then we'll learn English along the way. But so Sidus Masino Hamzu Todos, and we've got a whole bunch of people that are watching and tuning in. And so put forward, if you have any comments or any questions, put them. We're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, and we've already got a bunch coming in. But so let me, some of you have already shared this though, but I want to ask it more directly though. What is your relationship to the Chamorro language? And so, and connected to this, have you tried to learn it before? Have you been trying for a while? Or is it something you're getting into now? And so, Tish, I know that you talked a little bit esto in song and dididi por este, but go ahead and if you can answer it more directly.
Okay, well, yeah, no, growing up on the island, actually, there was a point in our military, in the time that we had gone, where we had to go back home. My father-in-law was ill, and I had to go home and take care of him. So while we were there, my 3 kids at the time, they actually went to school on Guam. They went to Talafufu Elementary, and so my kids actually took Chamorro classes there. So I was really happy that they had that experience. Unfortunately, my father-in-law passed away within the month, and while we were there, we actually had 2 other deaths. So we did a lot of our faith is very important in our family, and that comes from my grandmother. I wasn't strong in my faith before, and I'm kind of getting there and learning Chamorro. But my grandma was a Tetsa. I gave you a picture of my grandmother. She's actually she former vice mayor of Tamuning, Teresita. This is my family. 26 years we've been gone. but my grandmother is Teresita Bora from Tamuning. But she was a very popular Tetsa. She had been a Tetsa since she was 13. And so you said somebody was going to cry and it was going to be me. I knew it as soon as you said it. So I was exposed to a lot of Chamorro, attending all the rosaries and the novenas with her. So that was my motivation to teach my kids how to pray in Chamorro. So I've been teaching my kids how to pray in Chamorro for so many years, since 2019. My uncle Guru Perez will help me out, and he recorded how to do all the prayers, and I've taught my kids how to pray in Chamorro. I'm really proud of them, and we do like rosaries. We were doing like a monthly rosary with the family, and we would all pray together. And so my grandma's always present when we do that. But what I noticed I did try and learn Chamorro a little bit. I actually went to the University of Guam, and I actually took a Chamorro class. I did enough just to pass, but I never used it or applied it. So, I never really got to it. And when I was bringing my 3 younger kids to Guam, I said I really want them to learn something. So I took I started doing little things. My uncle gave me advice to just do little commands in the house: wash the dishes, help your sibling, open the door, babay peta, hutsumi peta, ajuri tselumu. And so we do little things. And then I started homeschooling my kids. And I started incorporating some Chamorro. And so we do little sentences. Malagutsu, Sinutsu, Kamalagwao, little things. And so we still, even the kids now, I would say something, and they're like, I can't remember. And then we'll sit there and we'll think about it, and, it'll trigger their memory. So all these just little bits that we put in the family just gives me a little bit more confidence in teaching them. I do want to say that when teaching the kids how to pray in Chamorro, they have, it's tough to do the prayers in Chamorro because they've got some really hard words in there, Mangilidzanu or something, like something, complicated. And so my kids actually, when we work on it, and what we were doing like rosaries every night, and we'd follow along with Chamorro devotions. We would pray with the YouTube video. And my uncle said, you should start with that, because my kids already know what the prayers mean. And then when they say it in Chamorro, they already know what they're saying. So we've made some connections. Like when we do our blessings, I would say, what was benediciam, and then they'll say, oh, bless us, and so little words like that. And then my kids, when we've had a couple of deaths in the family since we've done the rosaries, and we've actually led the rosaries on Zoom with our families. And I would lead it, and then the kids would take a decade. And when I would start crying during the rosary, my daughter would like chime in, and everybody would be surprised that my 13-year-old just takes over and starts doing like, the 10 Hail Marys by herself, So, and then because they have been doing the prayers, they can catch on the words. Like if I give them a new Chamorro song that we would practice, they already can like pronounce it great. And I'm like, I'm just amazed at how the kids have been learning. So I just really need to come to your class, Senor, more often, because I pick up, things every now, I pick up at least one new vocabulary word and I try to apply it. So I need to be a little bit more consistent with that.
No,
And
si Zeus Masi for sharing all of that. I think what you've offered is a good example for people that find a way to bring the language regularly in. And so I think, I tell people, if your faith is very important to you, then pray in Chamorro. And it may be difficult at first, but if you do it and you stick with it, it will pay off. And so your family is a very good example of that. And so Sidus Masi, Tish, for sharing. So Ohagomas. Catalina, and so to you now, and so what is your relationship to Chamorro over your life? Are you new to learning it? Have you been learning it for a while? I know that you shared a little bit before, but put for blood.
Okay. Yeah, when I was younger, I remember hanging out in the kitchen with my mother and my grandmother. And they're speaking in Chamorro, and I just always remember my grandmother making sure I understood what they were saying and repeating. It was in English, but at least I was able to understand what they were saying. Probably by the time I was 10 or 11, I was understanding more. And then later on, when I lived with my grandfather, he was much more comfortable speaking Chamorro. And I noticed this, so I made a deal with him. I said, I'll speak English, you speak Chamorro, and hopefully we can understand each other, because, we were living together. And I remember when I was probably 8 or 9, I asked my mother, I just stopped her in the house and I said, you need to teach me how to speak Chamorro, because, I keep saying I'm Chamorro, but yet I can't speak it. And I just remember her getting like scared and flat out refused, no, you don't need it. And she just walked away from me. And she never just walks away from me. So I was like, okay. So now with this class, I've been FaceTiming her, a few times a week, 3 or 4 times a week. And it's just so wonderful to see her giggling. And she's like so happy that we're able to speak this. And yeah, Tish, you're not the only one that's going to cry. And it's just so healing for both of us to be able to do this. And preparing for this, I was thinking about all the different times I tried to learn Chamorro. And what I noticed was, it was 2 times, wasn't a lot, but one was when I was on Guam, and one was when I was in San Diego at the Guam Club. They offered lessons for a while, but those didn't stick. And I'm wondering if it's because those teachers were native speakers. So their teaching was very academic. We're going to conjugate this. We're going to learn the rules. It's all about the rules. And the way we're learning now, it's from a non-native speaker who gets it. You were where we are. And the curriculum just supports quick acquisition of day-to-day phrases where you can already just begin having conversations, even if you're talking to yourself. I talk a lot to my dog when I take him outside. I tell him, look at everything. I'm at the net this, at the net that, everything. So yeah. So
Sidus Masi. See, for those who are watching or listening who are looking for strategies, we're already getting some great ideas from Tish to working with her kids to learn the prayers. But then even Catalina, just if you spend most of your time with a pet, just teach your pet Chamorro and then use them as a no judgment language partner, right? And then I love that. Just walk around and say, Atan ilangan, look at the sky. Atan itronku, look at and then pretty soon, you'll be talking to random people and you'll say, hey, Atan adzu. And you'll be like, oh, I forgot you don't speak Chamorro. I forgot you don't speak Chamorro, but it'll be so natural. Sidus Masi, Catalina for sharing. And then Gabby.
When I first got this question a few days ago, I had like a very surface answer, which was, it's all new to me. but I don't think that's entirely true. When I really look back at it, my grandmother, she took care of me for a few months when I was an infant and my mom was gone. And then she tragically passed away from a sudden heart attack in her mid-50s. But she is the matriarch of our family. So I always grew up hearing like, your grandmother would have done this. She would have cleaned the floor on her hands and knees. And, she's just always been on a pedestal in my life, but she's also been very connected to me. My grandmother played piano and I play piano. And when I sit down at the piano, I feel like I'm finally realizing in life that her hands are my hands. So I'm always yelling at my family, how come no one recorded her playing piano? And she just, anytime I'm getting to a point now in life where I'm realizing that when I need to find guidance or I need to feel loved and seen and accepted, I turn to my grandmother because she's always there and she's always been there, even though she's not here with me. And so I was thinking about it very surface level. Well, I'm all new to it, but that's not entirely true. It's been in my life since I was 5 years old. And then again, I guess it really took a boom. In 2020 was my first time living out at sea. And I was assisting on mapping the Norton Sound for, at the time, the client NOAA. And I was on the ship. And that was later when I actually started working for NOAA. But that's really cool too, because the photo with the rock and the coastline was like a whole moment. So I get on the ship. It's my first time living at sea. All the photos on the left, the one right under the rock and the coastline is a sun shower at 5 a.m. and I'm working out on the top deck. And there's all these super connected moments. And I'm on the ship and there's a man who lived in Guam for like a decade. And he tells me my first Chamorro legend, which is Puntos dos Amos. And I told him when I get home, I'm going to get a Chamorro legend book and I'm going to read it. And before I even get home, when you're on the ship, what you do is you analyze the data and you're basically looking for rocks in the seabed, and it's for safety and navigation. And so in 3D, you start seeing all these dots and all these rocks. And then you go to the coastline and you measure the depth of the water in relation to the land. And it gives you a marker of how the coastline is changing. Well, so I'm standing there with the staff shot doing what we call it like a tide shot observation. And it's low tide. And that rock right there is wedged right in the center between land and sea. And when I go home, after hearing my first Chamorro legend and being open to my grandmother and my grandfather, I get the Chamorro book, and the very first legend I open is Fu'una Zamputan, and that was pretty big. And then, oh my God, I bought that book and I sent it to everyone. And I bought this dictionary and I started writing poems in Chamorro. So at a very surface level, I'll say it's new, but I guess really after listening, this is what I love about talking to other Chamorros. Like, I feel like when I talk to other Chamorros, like I'm just understood and I'm gotten. And then we go off on tangents and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not new to it. I've been searching for it for a while. And I'm just now hitting a groove and speaking it and understanding it and listening to it. And it's so great because it sounds like everyone else has equally powerful experiences. So it's pretty cool.
C'est doucement. C'est doucement. Again, I think that's what you shared there is so key, because I think for a lot of people, they may not like the Chamorro aspects were around them or in them, but that's one of the things about languages is that you may hear a lot, but you may not consciously remember it. But once you're in the context, once you are reminded of it, once you sort of get refreshed in it, then you find that it has been there. So a lot of people who grew up around those who spoke Chamorro but can't actively speak it, all you need to do is positively trigger yourself enough. And then the language is in there. You just haven't connected things in a way to help you speak. But thank you, Gabby, for sharing that. And Carlo, and for you, so yeah, what has your relationship been to Chamorro? Did you have to take it in school on Guam? How were you? Who were your Chamorro teachers?
Yeah, so luckily for me, I was born and raised there and going to school, and right kindergarten already, introduced Chamorro class. Loved it. Chamorro bingo, making coconut candy. And I think I remember, I don't know, I was 5 years old. I get it. I was too young, but I was telling myself, I think I had a crush on my Chamorro teacher. And I know it's funny. I tell my wife all the time, like, maybe that's why I married you, Chamorro girl. But yeah, so I've always been around it, of course, obviously other cultures being on Guam, from the other islands. So shoot, I don't even know. And I guess obviously growing up, going to school, I was like, okay, it's just a class at this point of my life, or these parts of my life, until I got married to Natalie, and I see how much it's important to her. And so I'm looking at her right now. She's baking bread. It's important to her and our kids. So I really support her and support it and what's going on. Because Guam's still my home. The truth is, it's still my home. I was born and raised there. That's pretty much where I got my start. So I don't know. It's different for me, being, again, Filipino. And I mean, I was able to pick up my own language a little bit better, a little bit easier, of course. I can speak very little bit, and my wife thinks I'm fluent, but I'm not. But as far as hers, again, the whole reason is to help her, support her. So, because it's one of her goals, and I think dreams in her life, just to be able to do it and have our kids do the same thing. So we're doing something like what Tish is doing. She's using religion to teach them. As far as for us, it's mostly music, and I'm not sure what else. I have to ask Natalie, but I know music. My oldest is learning it a little bit through the music, and he likes to listen. Which is the older one that he likes to listen to? The who sings it? Sorry.
Shoot, now I
Never mind. Anyway, so
Tazagua, but music is a great way. Music is a
yeah,
great way,
yeah.
and
And
to you
I
and
like
your
to introduce them
family.
to Chris Malfunction, just to know a
Oh,
little bit of it's a bit of the culture, but not too much. But I guess it's fun. It's a fun way to introduce it to them. So I was lucky enough to live through that before he became senator. Um,
that's true.
what
That's
else?
true. That's true.
Gee, yeah,
But yes,
it's mostly
you bring
just being
you bring up
around.
another. Oh yes, you bring up another good strategy there. Music is a wonderful way
Yeah.
to really kind of immerse yourself. But if one of your sons is really into music, one of the things that I suggest is that listening to Chamorro music is one thing, but not everybody likes Chamorro music. Some
Oh, he
people don't
does
like the
actually.
cha-cha.
Oh,
Well, that's good. That's good then. Some people don't,
Natalie
because
likes
a
it when
lot of Chamorro music can be country message.
yeah, she likes it
Oh,
when the cha music
but
comes on
but
because I can give some of
oh
the
no, me too.
manamkus a run for their money.
But can always cover English songs and then translate them into
Yeah,
Chamorro.
yeah.
And so I always offer anybody that if you want help translating a song into Chamorro and then you'd like to perform it or record it in Chamorro, I'm always willing to help because that's a great way. That's a great way to just take something that you enjoy in English and then make it Chamorro. But Sidus Masi Carlo, Sidus Masi for sharing a little of your background there, and also sort of why you and Sissy are bringing Chamorro into your family more and more. And so let's if anyone out there, we have a bunch of questions. We have a bunch of questions and a bunch of comments. But I do want to get to one more question before we get into the audience, what the audience is saying. And so so we've touched on this a little bit organically through some of the comments, but I do want to ask, what is it about sort of Chamorro culture that interests you, appeals to you? Because for many people, that's something that really drives their desire to learn Chamorro, is because they see it as closely connected to the culture. But is there something about Chamorro culture, whether it's Gabby mentioned the legends that inspired her, Tish has mentioned sort of religion, Carlo has mentioned sort of music. And so what is it about the culture sort of that you that you feel connected to, that you feel is important. And Tish, let's go ahead and start with you.
Well, I guess like I said, I feel like it's unique. You know, there's not many Chamorros out there. I mean, you'll meet them if you're like in the military like us. We're gonna meet them, but we are, we are a small community in the big world. So I feel like this is our identity. So I even really liked that the University came out. Well, I went to Winning Elementary as well, a couple of years in LBJ, graduated from JFK, but you know, that was in the 80s and early 90s. So we didn't have the University. And I do like that I've taught the University to the kids, and we were just saying something, and my daughter goes, "Hey, I know that word. It's in the University." I was like, I was like, she was making that connection. And so I do feel I like we're a very unique culture. I love sharing our culture. I love sharing our food. There's like this wives group here in the base that we're in, and I'm like, it's a cooking club, and I'm like, okay, I want to take 1 month. I did March because of tomorrow month. I said, I want to do March, and I invited people to my house. We had a fiesta, had a whole spread, and I told them how we the different foods that I made, the red rice, the ribs, the kelaguen. And my kids love beef kelaguen, and I'm like, no, we can't make it kelaguen because not everybody likes beef kelaguen. It's like raw beef in my house, and but chicken kelaguen, and surprisingly, a lot of people were. I mean, I love Hagansuni, but there was a big community that really loved Hagansuni, and I loved it. But I just love sharing our culture because not many people know about it, and there's a lot of misconceptions, and so I like correcting people, or I like sharing it with people. I'm really excited if anybody wants to know about it. Oh, that answered your question, right?
Sijus Masi. No, Sijus Masi Hungan. And we always have to remember that, there are, let's say, about 200,000 or so Chamorros in the world, which means, you got to have pride. You got to share language and culture, because who else is going to do it for us? And so, Catalina, for you, what would you say sort of culturally interests you, inspires you?
Oh, definitely the music. I grew up, listening to Johnny Sublime and listening to the records that you've digitized, just the scratching needle. Yes, it sounds way better. It takes me back to being a kid. And I did have an opportunity to be a member of the Island Rain group that was led by Tony Charltis out of San Diego. I was in that group for a little bit. So we had ukuleles and guitars and percussion, and we sang Chamorro songs at fiestas, birthdays, and it was so fun to start a song, and people, they're all eating and they're like, oh, I gotta get up, because it's a cha-cha or it's their jam. I heard that a lot. That's my jam, and they come running on the dance floor. So the connection with that, and now that I've been studying, more where my vocabulary is expanding, I've been listening to a lot more, a wider range of the Chamorro music. I'm like, oh, that's what that song really means. So yeah, the music is really a big thing for me.
Sidrus Masi. Oh, wait, and Island Rain, was my Auntie Janice in Island Rain?
Yes, Janice Waller,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember hearing them play too. One of the last times I was in San Diego. Oh, Sidrus Masi. And then Gabby, for you, por favor.
Well, I was going to say, hands down for me, it's Chamorro pride. I was definitely raised with a lot of it. And it's a sense of like deep identity. So I'm biracial, and I grew up all over the world. but just the messages is kind of hammered in from a very young age, like you are Chamoru. That's your identity. And that's something my children, my daughter, she's 19, and my son, he's 10. And hands down, the pride in the food and sharing it with family on a personal level is something that, like, even though the Chamorro people kind of have like gone all over the place, and you have a lot of military influence and descendants, me included, and maybe the language is there, maybe the language isn't. Caligwen certainly is. Caligwen's not going anywhere. We make it every Thanksgiving and every New Year's, and then sometimes we just make it all the time. So, you know, and every family's got a different version of Tanakh, and we found out we had been saying it wrong in our family. So, you know, like the culture in some ways and the language in some ways gets stripped away, but in other ways it doesn't. Like, it stays in your hand, and it stays in the food, and it stays in the tradition, and that's personal. On the professional side, I found this book, The Properties of Perpetual Light, by Julian Aguan. I hope I'm saying that right. And he wrote this beautiful passage called More Right. And he's talking about observing star castles in the sand. And he's talking about how Chamorro people are like magic. And I was like, yes, that's very true. And the way he talks about kind of studying the natural sciences, there are many times in the Western scientific community, I don't feel I belong. And it's kind of followed me my whole career. And it's kind of followed me my whole life. There's just like these little, can't be on one side, can't be on the other. But with the Chamorro community, there's just such a natural sense of scientist. I genuinely feel we make the best natural scientists in the world. And my connection's pretty deep through the sciences. He said, I'm trying to look for the quote. He said, because magic could just as easily mean stargazing in the midday sun while looking down. And he's talking about just staring at like different sand patterns. And that's how I romanticize a hand lens, and looking at grains of sand through a hand lens. And sometimes when I talk to people from the Western scientific community, it's so different. There is a scientific process. It's very streamlined, hard data, which is also good, but it just lacks me. And so a lot of times I think what draws me to the Chamorro culture is it is a sense of identity and belonging. And I can take all these parts of me and I can throw them in different directions and it would all be valid and true. But ever since I was a child, I've always been told, you're Chamorro. That's what you are. So that's who I am.
Sejus Masi. Julian Uggan, Hungan, an important Chamorro writer. Hungan, also my pari. That's he's Sumaya's godfather, and so Hungan love that his work has reached a national level. Sejus Masi, Gabby, and so for Carlo. So what can you share, especially you were talking about humor earlier. And so that's an important part of Chamorro culture. But so what for you sort of is, and I see is Sissy watching over you while you are, is she making sure you don't say anything to embarrass the family? Just teasing.
No, she's just, I want her around. But yeah, so the humor, the humor, just the little, I don't know, little intricacies of, the Chamorro, the Filipino, on Guam, like how our mannerisms, like the Atin Baba, are you looking at me like that, and things like that, or you come to my island, you think you're tough. That stuff is funny. Chris Malfunction was hilarious, or the jealous, the egu girls all the time, or guys, it's being egu. That's funny, very funny. And it's funny because you kind of see it, especially growing up on Guam. You see it. I'm like, it's funny because it's true. But just like everyone said, the food. I like chilaquiles. I murder that a lot when my mother-in-law makes it, especially when my mother-in-law cooks, or the Nancy. Sorry, my wife's rolling her eyes, but it's true. But she does make some good Chamorro food. I love Chamorro food, hands down. I think the best. Too bad I have to drive far to eat it. So like Catalina, I think, Catalina, right, is in San Diego. I have to drive all the way down there for that. Or PIFA, which just happened. You can see the lines for the Chamorro restaurants, the longest lines in PIFA. So, I mean, what else? Gee, the legends too, just like Gabby said, a lot. And I was trying to tell myself, I don't believe in that, but as soon as I get back on Guam, I am not going to be out in the dark. I don't just go in the jungle by myself. I have to ask Sissy, please just ask them for me nicely. My my father-in-law was teasing me about it. Probably not going to say what he said, but no. But asking permission just to, I'm not even using the bathroom out there, just to walk. I would get scared. I don't want to, I don't want to end up with something swelling or things like that. Definitely respect. I don't know. I respect it a lot. The Tautamona especially. But I think there was a tree, the Nunu tree in LBJ. I used to play around that. I don't know why I did. Lucky thing, that's another thing. I noticed my Chamorro like to say lucky thing, or what else did Dad say? We were talking about this, but anyway, lucky thing, nothing happened to me. Well, I did play around it, thank goodness. Because again, you kind of need a Serrano to help you with that. You can't just go. And I don't know how my parents were going to go around doing that. But yeah,
Carlo.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
No, you. You
I mean, even
definitely
sports. We
reminded us
love
of
football and
the
baseball
humor.
back in Guam.
You
That was
definitely
really the
reminded
biggest
us of the
sport.
humor in the culture and in life on island.
Yes. Yes. Of course.
And so let me because we have about 10 minutes left. We can go a little bit long after 10 minutes, but I wanted to go ahead and read some comments that we've had so far, and then we can get into sort of a final question. And so here we go. We've got Lynn Hernandez, who says half a day from San Diego. Joe Cruz Camacho says half a day from Las Vegas. Senora Lillian Cruz, who's such a big supporter of Fanachu, says buenas todos Hamzu. Oh, and we have a David Titanfong. He says Catalina Hadzi Sinanamu, who is your mother, familian Padzetzesu Gibandan Tatahu. He says that he is Padzetzes, on his father's side. And then, we've got Lynn Hernandez, who says, I'm 69 years old, living in California, and have always wanted to learn the Chamorro language. Isa Gagarin, who's also a patron of Fanachu on Patreon, says, buenas hamzu todos, nalatla y finota, give life to our language. And so, Dana, who's also a Fanachu patron, says that her dog has also become her language partner in terms of learning Chamorro. And so Hungan and Diana Calvo says, great session. I can relate to all of you. And so not all of you have to ask this, but if any of you want to share very quickly, what has been your favorite moment in your language learning journey so far? And so if you have a particular moment that you would like to share, anyone, Gabby, did you want to share something?
Yeah, so when we started classes, I asked about like a speaking lab or open lab, and me and Catalina are in it, and Tish is in it too. Tish created the group, we have a Zoom link, and we've been doing it now for pretty faithfully 4 weeks. We have one tomorrow night, and we have Shyler. And Shyler comes in, and she's pretty fluent, and she corrects all our homework, and she helps us with pronunciations. And she made a comment like a week ago about like writing a script. So the other night we were talking, I was like, are you a coder? And we just had like this total bonding moment where we were talking about, I was making jokes about imposter syndrome with writing scripts. And she works with R, and we were making jokes about Python. And then Tiha Ann came in. She's another person she speaks more fluently than the rest of us, and she helps out a lot. And we were talking about mentorship, and we were talking about finding more people like us out in the actual workforce. And then Brianna, who also helped me start the group, we were all talking about like our education experience, because it took me like 15 years, and I had my daughter when I was 18. So it took me a lot longer to get my degree and get my career started. And I'm just now trying to find out what I what it is I want to do in life. Brianna was like, I still don't know. And she's like, and I went to college and then I got my master's. So it was such a good connected moment. It didn't really focus around a word. It was just so powerful to be talking with people and really connecting that kind of level.
Mhm.
And
So
to talk
just
to another Chamorro in the sciences was special.
no, Sidus Masi for sharing that. I'm always glad to hear people connecting through their language learning. Hungan Biba. And Tish, you have
Um,
something? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to, I guess, reiterate what our praying in the family, and we were practicing and just practicing over and over again. And when we had to actually use it, when we had a death in the family, and other people joined our prayer session, it I was, it felt good that I always like worried that I wasn't pronouncing things correctly, but everybody's like, wow, it sounded good, and I've kind of like, I guess over the years I've gotten better in pronunciation and just kind of um, saying the words, and so I guess that experience, even like the deacon saying, he liked how we were actually saying the words and not mumbling it, and it was like the pronunciation, and and then to see the kids every time we do it and see them grow, is kind of like those moments of um, again, my grandmother being there. So it's makes that connection with her.
Oh, Sidus Masi is Hungan. I mean, I think even Catalina, you shared about connection to your mom,
Mhm.
and so that was very heartwarming when you shared sort of that your mom, giggles and smiles
Mhm. And
when
she
hearing and learning
starts our
from him.
conversation in Chamorro now. So I don't even have to prompt her. She just starts with Hafte, first thing, and she's just so much happier. So, and one thing that I did, I think just yesterday, I'm a writer. So I write short stories, and I went to a writing group and I decided I'm going to write in Chamorro. So I started a story. I was in the dictionary more than I was actually typing, but that's okay. It's the beginning. It'll expand my vocabulary, I think. But when I got done, it was an hour, and I scrolled back up on, it's in Word. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, that's like a paragraph. That's some dialogue, and that's, oh my God, another paragraph. So yeah, that was just amazing to see that.
Mhm. Sidus Masi. And Carlo, did you want to share anything? A favorite sort of learning Chamorro, from favorite moment in your learning Chamorro?
So it's still really brand new in infancy, but the wife's been working on this for a long time. So I think my favorite is just trying to learn it together. So that way she can get it down and I can learn it and we can speak together, speak to our kids, and maybe teach our kids eventually, teach grandkids. Hopefully not soon though, but grandkids. You know. But yeah, it's still pretty new. So
Mm.
yeah.
But one of the great things is that once if you and Sissy can speak Chamorro and the kids, then you can speak Chamorro in the States and most people can understand you. I enjoy that secret language aspect of it whenever I travel with
Yeah.
my family. But
Yeah, it is. It's nice. Natalie does it at the stores, you know, and then if I know it in English, in case they don't, I try to translate. I work like as a translator. I feel proud of myself a little bit. Like, yeah, I translated that for her. But if I don't, I just stay silent. I'm like, listen to your mom or something like that.
Sidus Masi. And so we have run out of time, but I want to give each of you sort of a chance. one kind of final chance to share why you personally think that learning Chamorro is important. And you don't have to speak, you don't have to say a lot, but yes, why for you do you think it's important? And Tish, we'll start with you.
I guess I really wanted to um, learn it because I was embarrassed that I didn't know, and I came to the realization that if I could see that the language is slowly like disappearing with so many people not being able to say it. Eventually, nobody's going to be able to say it, and so I wanted to bring that into my family, and so that we can have something special to pass down to my children. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen after them, but I want to know that I did all that I could do to give them what I felt was important. So I'm hoping that can continue down the generation. And like I said, it's really special that we're just a small group of people in this big world, and the longer we can keep it up, I feel like it's important.
Gan bonito, si Diyos, si Tish. And Catalina, to you, what are your? Oh, go ahead. Por favor.
Oh, go ahead. Can you restate the question?
So, from your personal perspective, why do you think it's important? Just to share with others, for you personally, why you think it's important to learn Chamorro.
I kind of follow along with Tish with that. I think our culture is so precious because we are a rarity among humans on this planet, and plus I always think back. My grandmother's name was Catalina, so I'm named after her, and Catalina is my middle name. I started going by it maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I was like, I would not have been able to speak with her. She passed away before I was born. But I was like, that's just tragic to me that I would not have been able to speak to my grandmother because she didn't speak English. And I was like, well, here's an opportunity. I'm going to take it and work on this. So, yeah.
Si Diyos masi bonito ihinasomo. Thank you for sharing that. What a powerful point. Gabby, to you, why do you think personally it's important?
Yeah, well, for me, my grandma has always been a very strong presence in my life. I talk a lot about like my grandma and how she played piano and how I play piano. And in the past few years, I just kind of feel like I've had this kind of boom and like deep connection to her. And it's really kind of helped me understand, like, as I understand more about my grandmother, I feel like I understand more about my mother and more about myself. And it builds like a bigger sense of compassion and empathy. And as I build that respect and love and empathy and compassion for the women in my family, I build it for myself too. And then there's a real strong desire to preserve it. One day when I have grandchildren or I have, nephews or nieces, I want them to know like where their hands come from when they play piano. I want them to know where their inquisitive minds come from. And I want to keep that, like, I don't want them to be like, why didn't anyone film her playing piano? No one filmed my grandmother playing piano, and I don't know why. And her brother played, Henry, he played piano too, very musical and intuitive. So, I think that if I were to answer from like the professional side, I think that the Chamorro culture, I already said, we give a fresh and intuitive and natural perspective that can aid the Western scientific community. There's that bubble, but I think the overall bigger bubble for myself is it's just a sense of connection and making sure that connection doesn't leave throughout the generations.
Si Diyos masi hungan bonito si Diyos masi. And then Carlo, to you, why do you think it's important?
It's for the culture, to preserve the culture, keep it going. Especially coming out here to the States, and you just like everybody said, so small, Guam, Chamorro, people don't even know out here. They still don't know unless they're military. So just to keep that going, preserve it, it's very important to my wife, especially. See Sissy, Patsang, crybaby over here. Um, so that's really, what it's for, is just to keep it going and preserve the culture. That is because it's a part of your identity, the Chamorro people. To my wife, it's almost feeling like she's losing her identity a little bit, especially because she's missing this part, and she's not home and things like that. And so, just it's more so just to support her, So I don't have any problems, doing that. So it's all for her, really, because she told me, it's a matriarchal culture, at least when it started, right? So I'm like, okay, you're the boss. So yeah,
Biba.
that's really what it's for. It's I guess love for the wife, and love for the home that I grew up on. So because I do have good memories, had a lot of good Chamorro friends, and a lot of stuff that connects me to Guam. So I guess it's my way to kind of give back, because I don't know where I'd be, really, I guess, if it wasn't, if I wasn't lucky enough to be born on Guam. So yeah,
Biba. Si
thank
Diyos
you.
mas Carlo. Bonito dyan tadong isinangan mo lokwe. Thank you to all of you. I think one thing that we can learn from all that you've shared at the end there is, of course, that, learning a language, learning the native language of the Chamorro people, it can be something for you, for yourself, but you also learn it for others. You learn it for your children, your grandchildren, you learn it for your elders, including those who have passed on. But as we also saw with Carlo, you learn it for your friends and for your family, your loved ones. And so I think that we have seen here sort of in this conversation today, just a beautiful example of how language can be a gift. And it's a gift that we receive. It's a gift that we give others through the learning, the loving, the respect, and so on. And so, gininifondo ni corazon ho, from the bottom of my heart, si Diyos masin no hamzu na quattro. We were supposed to be joined by another student, Lindsay Hamilton, but she was confused about the time difference, and so unfortunately she wasn't able to join. But Megana si Diyos masin no hamzu todos, za para hamzu ni umeega zanu meekung oklokwe, si Diyos masi a Diyos, este ki manatli hital.